Yes, we are live right here every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. It's time for the good fight. Ooh, ooh, it's the good fight. Ooh, ooh. Thank you so much for joining us for the good fight on this night. We are so glad that you are here because we cannot have this conversation without you. We thank you for your support and your encouragement and all of the different ways that you show up. I am just like, yes, for Tuesday nights. Actually, I was studying some more today because I have these. I'm constantly thinking and constantly processing and constantly questioning, and so I was trying so hard to get some work done in the very Barnes and Noble in Little Rock, and these people kept coming over to me like they wanted me to know that they know Jesus because I was reading the Bible. They were like, "Oh, you talk about Jesus? I love Jesus." I'm like, "Okay." Like, "Oh, I see you over here reading the Bible, so oh, you must be a Christian." I'm like, well, so I thought I wasn't going to ever get through what I was trying to get through, but we are not the only ones excited about Jesus. And in this space, we challenge Jesus. We want to make sure that whatever it is that we say we believe in, that we are able to live that faith, that people, humans that we are interacting with can see our faith in action, not because we have a cross on our neck, not because we're saying Jesus every other sentence, not because when somebody asks you how you doing, you say blessed and highly favored, but because you really have taken the time to really understand what it is you believe for yourself. And then, as the Bible also declares, you should be able to give a ready response for that. You know how you don't have to prove anything, you don't have to try to persuade anybody, but you should at least know how to articulate what you believe. And I know some of us cannot do that. I have met us that cannot do that. So that's what this space is all about. So thank you all for being here. If this is your first time joining us for the good fight, welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your, I don't even know how many times I've joined the good fight, welcome, welcome, welcome. All of you all are welcome in this space, and you are greeted in the spirit of Salbona, that spirit that binds us together by our oneness, and that oneness is our humanity. Every voice is welcome here. Every perspective is welcome here. Every faith walk is welcome here. Even if you don't have any faith, you're welcome here. So just so glad that you are here. But if this is your first time, there are ways that you can engage with the good fight. One of them is to locate yourself in the story. I believe that the Bible is a story. Oh, and that reminds me, the Bible that I was reading, it was my first time picking it up. It's called the Lectio Bible. I was just fascinated by the name because I know the name means word, and Lectio, it reminds me of the word lectionary. It might not mean, I'm thinking about logos. It reminds me of the word lectionary, which is what we preached from in the United Methodist Church. I think other denominations preach from the lectionary too, but I can only tell you about my own experience. But anyway, I was excited about this book. It's written kind of in story. Like there are verses, they number the verses, but there are no breaks really there are no breaks in the text. There are no titles. There's nothing. Like there are no separations between paragraphs. It's just written all together like a story should be. And I see the Bible like that, as a story. As a matter of fact, I think it is one of the greatest stories ever written, because whatever you are looking for, you can find that in the Bible. You can pick it up as a resource. And if you want to talk about love, if you want to talk about marriage, if you want to talk about hate, if you want to talk about violence, if you want to talk about vengeance, if you want to talk about incest, if you want to talk about polyamory, like all of it is in there. So the goal for you, one of the ways for you to engage is, as the story is unfolding before you, you get to see which character you play. And you get to decide for yourself if that's the character you want to play. And when I say play, is that how you want to show up in the world? If not, here's an opportunity for you to interrogate yourself and think that through. If so, here's an opportunity for you to interrogate yourself and figure out how you can continue that or improve on that. And so it's all about you in that particular moment. But the second way that you can engage in a good fight is not about you at all. You can't even find yourself in the story because you don't know nothing about what we're talking about, because you've never experienced it. However, you do understand the need, the necessity, the the willingness to center somebody else's story. Everything ain't got to be about me. I don't have to understand everything. I don't have to know everything, but I can make space for somebody else's story so that it will help me grow in my own personal development. The third way that you can engage with the good fight is to walk through a door. So hopefully, my only hope is that you will walk out of this space feeling like the conversation is not over. You want to talk to somebody about it. You want to think it through some more. You want to send me a direct message. You want to call me on the phone, area code 228-236-7440. I've had several people ask me, you give your phone number? Yes, I do. I am a pastor at heart. And there's no such thing as the people can't have my number. And I ain't got no people. I'm going to let my people call you, but I ain't got no people. I am the people. So yes, you can feel free to hit me up at 228-236-7440. You can also comment here, right here on the screen, and we can engage and interact in that way as well. So I thought about something last week when I sent out the flyer. The flyer always goes live at 6:00 p.m. every single Tuesday, getting you ready for the conversation that starts an hour later. I don't know if people are going to try to read the Bible beforehand. I don't know if you're going to go through any kind of prep work. I don't know. What I do know is that I want to make sure that I am being diligent on my end to say, hey, this is what's coming up. This is what we're talking about. And here's the text if you want to look at it. If you want to. If you don't, it's okay, because we usually read it in this space. And so what happens to me sometimes is I will be thinking about a title, a topic, a theme, and I'll already go ahead and produce the flyer for it and have it scheduled to post at a certain time. And then in between those times, I think about something else. So the post will say one thing and I'll end up talking about something else. And it's only until later, because I've already scheduled this days ahead of time. It's only later that I say, wait a minute, I think I curved on that. So that's how I felt this week, because I said at first that last week was supposed to be about Jesus, the political prisoner. But instead I was asking you about how you recognize Jesus as the baby in the manger, as the Lion of Judah. If it's the Lion of Judah, it's the roaring lion. And so I sinned last week. I missed my mark. So this is the night that we're going to talk about Jesus as a political prisoner. And I went ahead and changed. So if you wanted to go back, because I know that Facebook keeps a record, I changed the flyer. So it now says that what we were talking about is which Jesus is yours. And then tonight we'll be talking about Jesus as a political prisoner. So for those of you who are paying attention, those of you who are noticing things like that, because I noticed stuff like that. I'm like, wait a minute, didn't she say we were going to do this last week? I'm that one who will restart an entire TV show. Did she have on a red blouse when she first walked through the door? And now the blouse green? Like, wait, what now? Y'all thought we weren't going to catch that? So I know that there are others out there just like me. So I just wanted to clear that up. So I wanted to talk about Jesus as a political prisoner, because one of the things that becomes increasingly clear to me as the days go by is that people are really, really willing and able to talk about certain topics only if they fit into a certain context. And so when we talk about political violence, people want to talk about it in terms of Charlie Kirk, but you don't want to talk about it as it relates to the lynchings of Black men and women and children. And so my goal is to have the conversation. Whatever I have to do to get us to have the conversation, that is my goal. I just had this dialogue with Triana the other day. I was telling her about, I don't really remember how we got on the subject, but when I was a pastor at Greenville, at Revels Memorial United Methodist Church in Greenville, that should have been around 2007, 2008. There was this woman who was in the church who said to me that she could not hear a word that I said in that pulpit as long as I was wearing pants. And after she said that, I was like, whoa. And I said to Triana, as the pastor, I am well within my rights to wear whatever I want to wear. If I want to wear my sleeves out, I can wear my sleeves out. If I want to wear my toes out, I can wear my toes. If I want to wear pants, I can do whatever I want to do because I am the authority in that space. I'm the head honcho in charge. But my question to myself was, what's more important? Is it more important for you to stake your claim as the leader, as the authoritarian, or is it more important that this woman hear Jesus? And so I decided that if anybody needed to hear Jesus, it was going to be her, based on what she just said to me. So I decided that I wasn't going to wear pants anymore. I went to Belk. They had a Belk in Greenville. Yes, they had a Belk in Greenville. They had a Walmart too. And I bought like a wardrobe full of dresses, one of which I actually had on Sunday, this past Sunday, like 2 days ago, because that is more important. What's more important to me is the conversation, how you are impacted by the conversation, whether the conversation moves you forward, how the conversation helps you see yourself, how the conversation helps you become a better human, like how the conversation helps you fortify your faith. Like that's what's most important to me. So if the only way that we can talk about political violence is to root it in a subject that so many people love to talk about, which is Jesus, and away from a context that people don't want to talk about, I'm willing to do that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to mention it. That just means that I'm not going to source the conversation in that. And so we've been talking a lot about political violence, especially since the death of Charlie Kirk. We've got people who are continuously responding to this man and his death and his life. And they're talking about political violence and what it means, and free speech and what it means. And there's a whole lot of warfare going on around this issue that was catalyzed by Charlie Kirk's death. Evidently the conversation was already happening, and I just didn't know about it because I did not know. I had never heard Charlie Kirk's name before, ever, until he was assassinated. Sunday, I actually, because I asked that question in all of the spaces that I'm in, and Sunday it was the first time that one person said, "Oh yeah, I had heard about him." And so I want to talk about political violence, but not because of Charlie Kirk. I couldn't care less about Charlie Kirk and his life. I do care about the damage that his life caused to people. But I want to talk about it as it relates to Jesus. So whether you are a Jesus follower, whether you are a Jesus believer, whether you are an atheist, it doesn't matter. I'm not asking you at all what you believe. What I'm asking us to do is think about Jesus as a political prisoner, and what does that look like? So the text that I offered up was from Matthew chapter 26, starting at 57 and going through 75. And that's the text that I used on the flyer. But actually, that's the text that is like a prerequisite. Like, in order for us to start with 27, we really need you to know something about 26. But it is clear to me that we never have enough time to do and talk about all of what I have prepared. So I have to make some very strategic choices as to what I'm going to talk about. So I'm not going to deal with chapter 26 at all. It is my hope that you will read it on your own. And that Lectio Bible that I talked about is the New International Version. So even if you say, well, I need to go get the Lectio Bible. Well, no, if you have the New International Version, it's going to say the exact same thing as the Lectio Bible. The only difference is when we are reading the Bibles that are curated for us, that have the paragraphs and the titles, on some level they are guiding our reading. Because the Lectio does not have any titles, does not have any gaps, does not have any pauses, then the story reads more, there's more fluid in the story. And that makes a big difference in how you understand it. And so that would be one of the reasons that I invite you to consider a Lectio Bible. Those of you who are like me that still want to have a book in your hand. I could not find a digital copy of the Lectio, but I did not do an exhaustive search. And the Bible that I saw in Barnes and Noble was $49.99. So just trying to give you all the information that you need to say yes or no. So I want to start with with chapter 27. And here's one of those cases where I'm going to defy the rules that I was taught in seminary. In seminary, they say, do not ever, ever read more than 10 verses, because the person's capacity to hear and understand in that moment doesn't go past that. Doesn't mean that the person is dumb or stupid or ignorant. None of that. Is that we want to make sure as pastors that we eliminate all barriers to the receiving of the word that we believe God has sent forth for that day. So if I read 20 verses and I know that that's going to be a hindrance to you in your understanding, then it doesn't make, I mean, it's plain as day to say, let's not read 20 verses. But in this case, it's a lot of verses that we have to read from chapter 27. It might even be 50 or so verses. And I'm going to read them all, but I'm not going to read them as one. I'm going to read them according to how I cut them up in blocks, and then talk about them along the way. And then point out the ways that Jesus can be viewed as a political prisoner. I'm not asking you, I'm not trying to persuade you, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm just offering up for your consideration a new lens, or a different lens, or the same lens you've used before, to see Jesus in a different way, other than the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world, or the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, or the one who died on the cross to save your sins, but to see him as under attack by the state. So that's what I'm asking us to think about on this day. So I'm going to start with chapter 27, verses 1 through 5. Oh, the chopping up of the blocks. There's the only rhyme or reason to it is that I was trying to make it a clean cut using my phone. So however many verses allowed me to make it easier for us to stop and start the conversation, that's the only rule that I was following as to how I was going to break up this text. So we're going to start right here with Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 through 5. And we're thinking about Jesus as a political prisoner. Do I need to give any more context about what it means to be a political prisoner? A political prisoner means that you are one that the government seeks out specifically because they are afraid of the message that you are sending, that the message that you are espousing, the message that you're standing firm on, the message that you are delivering to the people is a threat to the government in the way that it wants to function. So the government has an agenda, the government has a politic, and anyone who speaks out against that to the point where they can change it, that they can organize and mobilize people to deal a blow to that politic that the government holds, then the government then declares you an enemy, and they're going to come after you by any means necessary. And so I'm asking you to think about Jesus in that way. The message that Jesus is sending, the message that Jesus was sending through his rebuke of the people who wanted to stone the woman who was caught in adultery, the message that Jesus is sending and talking to and embracing the woman at the well, the woman at the well who had been shunned by other people because she had been married 7 times, but the one that she's with is not even her husband. And so the message that Jesus was sending when he turned over the tables in the temple and drove out all of the merchants and the animals, the doves, everybody, get out of here, because this is supposed to be the den of prayer, a house of prayer, but you have turned it into a capitalistic machine. So Jesus is sending messages that say the government as it stands is not operating in a way that is conducive to the will of God, the God that I know, the God that I am here to testify on behalf of, to witness to. So I'm coming in, setting the record straight. I'm turning over the apple cart. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that God's word goes forth the way I believe I'm supposed to share it. And I'm doing that by putting my body on the line and by embracing that purpose that he believes he had in his life. He ends up at the very mercy of the government, and the government has no mercy for him. And the government sanctions his death. The government actually is the one who calls for his death, right? And so that's what it means to be a political prisoner, and that's the lens through which I'm offering up this picture of Jesus and asking you to consider it. Now, when I say consider it, whatever you hear, let it fall on your shoulders. It doesn't have to go any further than your shoulders. Just let it fall on your shoulders. And then once the conversation is over, you can then say, okay, let me look at this. Let me think about this. And some stuff you sweep off your shoulder because you have absolutely no use for it. And some stuff you pick up and say, you know what, I want to think about that a little more. So you ingest that, you allow it to go a little deeper into your spirit. So I think that's enough of a context. I hope it is, for us to think about Jesus as a political prisoner and using Matthew chapter 27 specifically to raise this issue for us through story. So here's Matthew chapter 27, verses 1 through 5. Let me see. I'm going to try to make this bigger. Oh, shoot. Where are my glasses? Matthew chapter 27. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. I want to read this again. There's so much packed into this, and I want us to try to unpack all of it as much of it as we can, as much as is feasible in this time that we have. But I want to read that again, and I want us to let the words just again fall over us, just wash over us as we think about what is being said at the beginning of this story in Matthew 27. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and the elders of the people made their plans how to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. So when we think about this conversation at the very beginning, the story in chapter 27 says, all the chief priests and all of the elders gathered together to plan how they were going to execute Jesus. So the chief priests are the leaders in the community. The elders are the leaders in the community. So those who have power, who have the power to change the trajectory of a person's life because of by their word, declaring that it's going to be done and finding a way to get it done. These leaders of the community who work on behalf of the government because they are in authority, they are the ones who are coming together to plan the execution of Jesus. This is their desire for him to be executed. But they don't want to do it themselves. They are trying to keep their hands as clean as possible, because when you say, one of the things that I talk to people about all the time is they say, Denise, you don't like to talk on the phone. One reason I don't like to talk on the phone is because of my hearing. I'm deficient in my hearing. Another reason I don't like to talk on the phone, especially when I'm talking business, is because there is no record that's being generated. Well, usually before now, there was no record that was being generated over what is being said. So there was no proof that something was said. There was nothing that you can fall back on and say, wait a minute, this is what happened. There's no recourse if someone refuses to honor the contract that you had made over the text. And so it's important to me to be able to put somebody in remembrance of their words, particularly when we're talking about talking business. But now, for those of you who have an iPhone, I don't know how Androids work. I don't think I've ever had an Android. I think I tried. Yeah, I think I tried it for a little bit of a season. But for those of us who have iPhones, for every call, there is a little button at the top left of your screen. Well, depending on what number. If you got a 12, this ain't going to work for you. But depending on what number phone you have, like I have a 15, we're on 17 now. There's a button up there that you can click that says now recording this call. And it's a verbal declaration so that anybody who's listening can hear it say, listen, you being recorded. So you can't sue me for recording you because it makes it plain that you're being recorded. And so now you do have a record of phone calls, because once the phone call stops, the recording, the phone transcribes it. There's a transcript that's going to pull up in your notes app so that you can see what was said. And so that is one of the reasons why. So for these leaders of the community who are planning and plotting and strategically making a move to have Jesus executed. Executed means we want him gone. We want him to die. We don't want him to be hurt. We don't just want him to be hurt. We don't want him to go away for a couple of months. We want him erased from this earth so that by erasing him from this earth, we are hoping to silence his message, because his message is detrimental to the status quo. And so they don't want their hands to get dirty. And so they have already found somebody willing to offer Jesus up. And this person is Judas. Judas is one of the 12 disciples. And so this is a person who Jesus had as a member of his inner circle. As a matter of fact, according to the way we've been taught to understand the disciples, those 12 disciples, which include Judas, were handpicked by Jesus. So Jesus picks this person, the way that we understand it, picks this person, believing that this person is going to be the kind of disciple that he's looking for, only to find out later that Judas betrays Jesus because he's a member of the inner circle, and he is the one who offers to deliver Jesus to the leaders, to the chief priests and the elders. And of course, there's a price attached. So Jesus is worth 30 pieces of silver to Judas in this moment that they are negotiating this contract. I want us to think about that for just a minute, though. For those of us who continue to insist that Jesus is not only the Son of God, but Jesus is the second person in the Trinity, making Jesus also God, fully human and fully divine at the same time. For Judas to surprise Jesus with his betrayal would undermine his godship. If we believe that God is omniscient, God is all-knowing, then that means that if Jesus is God in the second person, the one that became flesh and dwelt among us, then Jesus would have to know what Judas is going to do. It's the same conversation we have about people who are LGBTQIA+. There is we as a society, and I don't even know where it came from, and I may or may not do the research to figure out where we got this coming out from, that we apply to people who are in this community, that you have to tell us at some point that you are same gender loving. People who are not same gender loving don't owe that conversation to anybody. So why the onus is on same gender loving people to have to declare who they are to the world and to their family and to whoever, I'm not sure. But for people to have to come out, you're not coming out to Jesus. Because if Jesus, again, is all-knowing, then Jesus already knew. So there's no surprising God. And so that's why our prayers, when we pray to God, it's not because we're trying to inform God of anything. God already knows. The prayer is for us, to give us strength, to remind us of where our strength comes from, to remind us of, to help us recognize and realize that we need to make sure that we understand that we can't do this, whatever it is, on our own. We got to pull some resources from a higher power and be fortified and bold and confident in what we know we can do, because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. That's what that text is for. And so for us to believe that Judas did something that Jesus was unaware of, it doesn't make sense. if you believe that Jesus is the second person of the Trinity. So Judas is the one who the chief priests and the elders have already found to deliver up Jesus. And Judas says this, which I find interesting, not in chapter 27, but in this later on in the same story. The Judas says to the chief priests and the elders, it's the one that I kiss. The one that I kiss is the one that you're looking for, which suggests to me that the chief priests and the elders don't know who Jesus is. They've heard about Jesus, and they're threatened by his message, and they see the impact that Jesus is having on the people, and so they want to get rid of him, but they themselves have not interacted. And it's the same thing that happens with our politicians of today, that you are so busy being wooed by the lobbyists. You're so busy being wooed by the special interest groups that the people on the ground who are regular citizens, who are your constituents, you never meet with us. You never take our calls. You never respond to our emails because you're more concerned about the money that can be exchanged in the deals that you are making behind our backs. It's the same situation here for Judas to say, the one that I kiss is the one that you want. So that's going to be your sign. So when Judas realized, so after the chief priests have already met, and the elders, they've made this decision to have Jesus executed. They have him bound. Again, they don't bind him. They're not touching this. They are controlling it, but they're not touching it. So they have him bound and ready to go on this trek. It's a long trek to when the crucifixion is actually going to happen. And Judas realizes, wait, hold on. It was that them 30 pieces of silver looked good to me at the time. Like, I did not really realize the depth of what I was doing. And here's where we talk about unintended consequences, which are sometimes good and sometimes bad. I can tell you, I can give you an example of an unintended consequence that was good. So when we talk about sidewalks in our neighborhoods, we think about people who are differently abled than we are. And we decided that for the sidewalk, somebody decided that they were going to create a little bit of a ramp that will allow you to roll onto the sidewalk if you are using some kind of walker, or if you are using a wheelchair, that if you want to be on the public street and outside enjoying the city, the neighborhood, out for a brisk roll in the sun, that you should be able to do that. There should be nothing that impedes your ability to do that. And so that ramp was created for those who are differently able. But the unintended consequences that for people who are riding bikes, that same ramp allows you to get on the sidewalk more seamlessly than jumping the curb. And so it was meant for one population, but it actually benefited more than one population. So that would be an example of a good unintended consequence. But here, Judas was saying, okay, I want to get these 30 pieces of silver, not thinking about the unintended consequences. He only to realize now that you have made a huge mistake, because now you are directly responsible for Jesus's death. Like, not just him getting beat, not just him being talked about or humiliated, but you have now set in motion a plan that didn't start with you, but that you are very much directly involved in. And so Judas, in this moment, has this epiphany that if I had known this, I wouldn't have done it. So he wants to renege on his promise to. He wants to renege on his part in the plan to turn Jesus over to the elders. And so he comes back and he's like, "Look, I made a mistake. I want to give you all these 30 pieces of silver back." And the people are like, the chief priests and the elders like, "What are you talking? No, that's not how this works. This is already in motion. You've already played your part. Whatever you want to do now is not up to us. We don't even want the silver back. Don't give it to us," which is why Judas ends up throwing it down right there in the temple, or whatever area that they're in, whatever space they're in, because he doesn't want any parts of it either. And so Judas throws down the 30 pieces of silver, and then he goes out and he hangs himself. This story about Judas hanging himself is the reason why today we continue to stigmatize people who commit suicide. Oh my goodness, what was that word that somebody, it was Osiris Bali who gave me a new way of talking about who self, I have to ask him. But suicide, we've stigmatized suicide so much so that we've had to create a different way, a different language for it, because we got to remove the stigma. Because when we say, well, Judas hung himself, and so suicide is wrong, the reason we say that is because his suicide is attached to the crucifixion of Jesus. So you betrayed Jesus, you are a sinner, and this is what your actions were of as a sinner, and so now you are condemned to hell. Because if you die in your sin, so the theory goes, so the philosophy goes, so the doctrine goes, the dogma goes, that if you die in your sin, then hell is your home. So anyone who commits suicide, then you are acting just like Judas did, and so therefore you are condemned, and hell will be your home. But is that really what happened with Judas? Or did Judas say, hey, I realize that I have to hold myself accountable for my actions, that there are consequences for my actions. I thought that the chief priests and the elders were going to absolve me of this. I thought that they were going to help me through it. I thought that they were going to say, oh, it's okay. We see you made a mistake. We're going to forgive you. No, they didn't. And so that plan didn't work. And so now he's feeling overwhelmed. Now he doesn't see a way out. And so now he says, the only thing I know to do is to hold myself accountable for my own actions and to end my life. And that's his own personal choice that he has the freedom to make. The Bible doesn't say, oh my goodness, he's going to hell in this story. I'm not talking about what people did with the story. I'm talking about what the story says to us on its face. What the story says for in the context and the understanding of when the story was written. What it says, it doesn't say anything about him going to hell. It doesn't say anything about him being condemned by his actions. It doesn't say anything about he didn't have the right to have full authority over his body. It doesn't say any of that. It says he threw down the pieces of silver. He went out and he hung himself. Now it's 30 pieces of silver on the floor. Y'all, what we gonna do? Well, we ain't gonna leave it here. That's so the chief priests and the elders pick up the 30 pieces of silver, and we'll see what they do with it in just a moment. So I wanted to lift up the fact that these are the leaders, these are the government the representatives of the government who have decided and are strategically planning the execution of a person that they believe can upend their politics, and then how they work to get people to participate in their plan, which allows them to step back and act like it didn't have anything to do with them, because there's no recording of the conversation. There's no text message that we can pull up. If somebody accuses them, they have plausible deniability. But in this case, well, they're going to claim plausible deniability. And then Judas, it has this epiphany. Oh my goodness, what have I done? And he wants to, he feels so bad. He wants to own up for it. But the only way he sees out of it is to commit suicide. And most of the people that I know who have attempted suicide, I don't know anyone that has committed suicide. I try to live in community with folks so that we have a way of being together, so that when those nights you experiencing those darkest nights, that you know to call me, and I will sit with you through that night. I will take your weapon and keep it with me. I will make sure that I am standing guard all night long, that I don't go to sleep because I'm watching and tarrying, waiting on you to make sure that you wake up the next morning. I try to live in that kind of community so that you can call us so we don't get to that point. But some people, absolutely, that is the choice that they make. And so, but for the people that I know who have attempted suicide, that is what happens, that it's so dark that they cannot see a way out. They do not know, they don't realize in the moment that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And so it's on us to build those kinds of relationships that help them know, even in the darkest of the darkest of the darkest of your hour, I am with you to help you through this. And so Judas ends up committing suicide. So let's keep going. So that was Matthew 27, 1 through 5. Here's Matthew 27, 6 through 11. And remember, the only way it's broken up, the only reason it's broken up in these blocks is because it was a clean break in my, when I was looking at it on my phone. The chief priests picked up the coins and said, "It is against the law to put this into the treasury since it is blood money." So they decided to use the money to buy the potter's field as a burial place for foreigners. That is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Okay, let's think about this. So here we are with the chief priest and the elders saying, we're not going to leave these 30 pieces of silver sitting right here. We're going to pick them up. But we can't put them in the treasury because this is blood money. And we need to honor, we need to honor the rule that says blood money cannot be included in the treasury of the government. So wait a minute now. It's okay for the government to collude, to be in collusion with other collaborators to sanction somebody's death, but we can't put this money back in the treasury because that is against the law. So wait, now what? So you're not worried about being against the law that says thou shalt not kill and this would be part of the Torah. So this would be part of your understanding of what it means to serve the only true and wise God, who you would call, whose name you wouldn't even call because it's so holy and so sacred. It's okay to break that law, but this law about the money, we're going to keep that law. And so they said we cannot do that. So instead, they use the money to buy some land for foreigners to be buried. So this man who's preaching, who's delivering a message that can upset the power structure that we have in place, we're going to get rid of him. But the foreigner, we care enough about to make sure they have a place to be buried. Is anybody else asking yourself, is I'm in the twilight zone? And also in this world where we are xenophobic, where we believe that foreigners are illegal and they're illegal aliens and they coming over and they taking our jobs and they messing up our America First message that we're trying to send. And so we want to make sure that we get them out of here. We're deporting all of them. But the Bible itself says, no, we're going to care for enough for the foreigner to at least make sure that they have a place to be buried. We got to stop. We got to rethink how we keep just using God's name whenever we get ready to serve our own purpose. Because when we really begin to dig deeper into the text, there's no reason why we should be deporting anybody that we call an illegal, because it's illegal that we're using is same as foreigner in the Bible. And the foreigner, and the Bible says, if they're creating a cemetery for them, that means that they can live their entire lives there until they die and then have a place to go, a resting place for their souls. So that's what the good fight is about, like lifting this up to say, okay, now how is your faith gonna show up? I'm not talking about how anybody else's faith shows up, but how is your faith gonna show up in this space where you are shouting and walking and voting against people who you call illegal, who I know for a fact we need to stop using that word because it's divisive, who are undocumented. You're saying, no, they got to go because this is a Christian nation and God wants it to be Christian. Well, what you going to do with this text right here in the New Testament, not from the Old Testament, but in the New Testament? What you going to do with it? Which also brings me to this next part where Jeremiah, it says, once they decided to buy the plot of land with the 30 pieces of silver as a burial place, a cemetery for the foreigners, for the undocumented among them, then it says, and that clinched, that right there then made the scripture reference from Jeremiah. That's what manifested this scripture that says that they bought this and they bought the land. So this act of creating this cemetery for the undocumented among them, this is what they say is found in the Old Testament through the mouth of Jeremiah, where it says, okay, let me read it for you again. It says, that is why, this is verse 8, that is why it has been called the field of blood to this day. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him, talking about Jesus, by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. So this is a quote. If you can see the quotations, verse 9, then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. Open the quotes. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field as the Lord commanded me. Close the quote. So the question becomes, who is me? The answer is Jeremiah. How is Jeremiah going to fulfill fulfill what was spoken in the Old Testament if he didn't even know Jesus? Okay, let's think about this. Jesus, as a Jew, believed in the Torah. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. If you're going to use sign language, this is the number 6. The number 3 looks like this, so you can use one hand to count with. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 books of the Bible, that's what the Torah was. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So Jeremiah is way over here in the Old Testament. So if these are Jews who, first of all, didn't even know that the Bible was being written, and the books that they were using, they will open up the scroll. They're going to open up the scrolls to a text that's from the Torah. You got 5 books. Jeremiah doesn't exist there. And even if you want to say, well, Denise, come on now, let's just give us some leeway. It's in the Old Testament. Even if you want to say that Jeremiah exists, if you want to give the Bible that leeway, I'm not mad about it. But there's no way that Jeremiah could say that the Lord commanded me to create this this land for because of the betrayal of Jesus. That Jesus told me as Jeremiah to make sure that told me to use this silver to make this plot of land for the people over here in the New Testament. Jeremiah would have had no concept of what was happening, no idea, would not know who any of the players were. It's not possible. And I'm sure that the person who wrote this, who created this, who made sure that this was included in the Bible, that edited it, that this person wasn't thinking. They just wasn't thinking. They just weren't thinking, because if they were thinking, they would have left off the me part. Because for you to say that this is what Jeremiah said he was going to do with the money was to make sure that they buy a plot of land for the undocumented in the time in which Jesus is crucified, is no way that happened. Now, you can make it happen, because you can say things like, well, I believe by faith that every word that is said is inspired by God. So if God said it, that settles it, and I believe it. Well, you can do that and believe it. But in terms of helping people understand, remember, the good fight is making sure that we can articulate for ourselves what our faith is rooted and grounded in. And if you're going to get to the point all the time in your faith when something doesn't make sense and say, oh, well, God said it, that settles it, then what are you standing firm on? When those days are darkest for you and you've got to call on a higher power, whatever name you give the higher power, however many people you think it is, when it's time for you to call on it, what are you going to hold fast to? I just hope that I can take this leap of faith. But if we curate our faith so that it's something that we can understand, it's something that we can articulate to ourselves, it's something that we can practice, it's something that we can trust, It's something that we can believe. It's something that we can share. Then in those moments that we feel lost, we don't even have to call on the pastor. We don't even have to go to a session with the priest. We don't have to do anything except sit down and center ourselves and feel the power of the Holy Spirit coming over us, reminding us that our faith is real because we understand it as such. That's the importance of being able to know for yourself whether you share it with somebody else or not. Now, as we go on, we're definitely not gonna get to chapter 28, but the story continues from 26 all the way to 28 in Matthew. At the end of Matthew 28, that's when you hear the call to action. Now you go forth and you preach this gospel, making disciples out of all people and to the ends of the earth. That's what you're going to do. Well, if you don't understand your faith yourself, then this call to action cannot be for you because you're finna mess up some stuff. You finna mess up the whole program because you getting ready to go out there. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what they believe. And the first time somebody challenges you on it, you're going to feel attacked. When really all the people are doing is highlighting the deficiencies in the faith you say that you believe in. Okay, so the 30 pieces of silver. Now, it says in the meantime, now Jesus is in front of the governor. Who is the governor? Now, we have these governors that we have that are rulers of the state. Basically, they are in control. They have the authority to make decisions on behalf of the states all across the United States. In this case, that's not exactly how the governors work, but they are prominent people and they do have power and they are leaders. And the only way you can call a person a leader is if they have followers. And so for them to be called leaders, that means that people are following them and they are executing whatever demands and commands they send forth. So Jesus is in front of the governor now, and the governor says, like, who are you? What does he say? He asks him the question, are you the king of the Jews? Because that is what Jesus is being, that's the crime. That's what he's been indicted for. Like, we think about our own language and our own legal jargon. In order for you to, so the law enforcement says, we have enough information to believe that this person is guilty of this crime. We want this person prosecuted at the fullest extent of the law. In order to do that, they have to receive an indictment that gives them permission to go out and arrest this person, go forth with the trial. They've already been arrested. Go forward with the trial. And so they have this secret meeting because people who are indicted, the public cannot show up for that conversation. They convene in private and they say, hey, we got enough information. We want to indict this person. And the charge is this. So in this case, Jesus has been arrested. Remember, they bound him and they turned him over. They handed him over. So he's been arrested. And now he's been indicted. And the charge is, he says he's king of the Jews. The charge is, he says he's king of the Jews. That's the charge. And here we are with verses 12 through 18. Let's keep going. Jesus, when they say, are you king of the Jews? Jesus' response is, you have said so. Let's listen to that. Jesus says, remember the question right before this is, are you the king of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. I want to read this again. The question right before this is, are you talking to Jesus, the King of the Jews? You have said so, Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony they are bringing against you? But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he, talking about Pilate, who is the governor, knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. Basically, he's saying, I already know what y'all gonna do, because y'all have made it clear by the actions you've already taken by handing this man over to me. Let's think about this for a minute. At no time does Jesus say, "I am the King of the Jews." It's according to Matthew chapter 27. When the chief priests and the elders asked him, he said nothing. When Pilate, the governor, asked him, he said, "That's what you said." And Jesus is still saying, those of us who believe we can hear the voice of Jesus in our spirit without hearing the sound. That's how I know. I know you're talking to me, but it doesn't have a sound, but I can hear you clearly. That's just a conundrum. Jesus says to us even today, y'all keep putting my name in stuff. Y'all swear y'all doing something on behalf of me, and I ain't said nothing. I did not sanction this. I'm not ordained it. You ain't prophesying on my behalf. You got me mixed up into stuff that has nothing to do with me. Jesus never says, "I am the King of the Jews." He says, "That's who you say I am." And so Pilate, the governor, wants him to defend himself. The last job that I lost, part of the reason I lost it was because I did not defend myself. Because all manner of evilness was going on around me and about me, and because of me, and they wanted to get me, and they were going to get me by any means necessary. I called HR. I said, "Hey, I believe they're coming for me. What recourse do I have?" HR told me, "If your supervisor wants you gone, there's nothing that you're going to be able to do to stop it." Once HR told me that, why I'm going to defend myself? I'm not going to try to persuade you not to get rid of me. If you have made up your mind that you no longer want my voice, you no longer want me to be a member of your team, okay, let's have at it. I'm not going to quit. You're going to have to fire me, though, because I need the benefits that come with being fired. I'm not getting ready to quit. I'm not going to just roll over for you. And so Jesus is like, "Listen, I done already been betrayed," the way you all see it, because Jesus knew what was going to happen. So the betrayal has already happened. I've already been arrested. You've already falsely accused me of a crime that I did not commit, because even now I tell you I never said it. That's what you said. But yet I know Jesus can see the writing on the wall. I'm going to be executed. I'm going to be crucified anyway. So why put up a fight? So Jesus doesn't put up a fight. Jesus does not try to defend himself. Jesus says, "That's what you said." And he done with it. And so the Pilate goes on to say, "Okay, it's time for the festival. This is part of the festival. The tradition, the custom is that we release a prisoner to you, whichever one you want. You got Jesus Barabbas and you got Jesus, the Son of Man." Now, is anybody beside me curious as to why Jesus Christ shares the same name with Jesus Barabbas, whichever way you want to say it. Don't make me know, never mind. So wait, both of them Jesus? Well, when I looked it up, Jesus Barabbas is called Jesus Barabbas because Jesus in this instance means Son of the Father. Well, we're calling Jesus Christ Son of God. So Son of the Father, Son of God. We believe that the Trinity is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. So then if Jesus Barabbas is the Son of the Father and God is called Father, we call God Father, then which one of them is the Christ? Can't they both be the Christ? I mean, I'm just asking, because that's what it said in the book. Jesus Barabbas and Jesus Christ. Now, which one you want? Now, Barabbas, they knew, well known in the neighborhood. Everybody is clear that this man is a bona fide criminal. We all know it. We all can attest to it. And who do you want? You want this man who we know is guilty and this man who we cannot prove is guilty. Which one do you want? And Pilate said, I asked the question because I already know, but I want to make it clear to everybody. I want the record to be straight. I already know why you sent them to me, but I'm going to put the onus on you. You tell me which one you want. I already know that you're playing games. But which one do you want? All of this is bad. Y'all not going to be able to say the governor said, that Pilate said, you're not going to put this on me. I already understand. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I can already see it. And so we'll see what happens after that next week as we continue this conversation about Jesus, the political prisoner. Thank you so much for joining us in the Good Fight right here every Tuesday from 7 to 8. Cannot wait to continue the conversation on next week.